I stood there, staring at my wife as she scrolled through her phone, her demeanor casual, almost detached. The realization hit me like a cold gust of wind. There was no room reserved for me. They had planned everything meticulously, it seemed, except for one small detail: my inclusion. My name was absent from the itinerary, but it wasn't a simple mistake. It was intentional. At first, I asked her calmly, "Where's my room?" expecting it to be some sort of oversight, a minor slip-up that we could laugh about later. But her expression told me everything. She didn't flinch. Instead, she shrugged, her tone dripping with indifference. "You'll manage, right? It's not a big deal." Her words echoed in my mind, and before I could process their meaning, one of her friends chimed in. "Honestly, only the important people get rooms. It's just how it is. You'll understand." A chorus of laughter followed, each chuckle hitting me like a slap across the face. My wife didn't defend me or even attempt to explain. She just sat there, silent, as if their words carried no weight. I felt my chest tighten, the room seeming to shrink around me, suffocating in the air thick with smugness. It wasn't the absence of a room that stung. It was the absence of respect. They weren't just excluding me from the vacation. They were erasing me from her life, belittling me in plain sight. I looked around at the group. Her friends lounged on the sofa, expensive handbags resting on the armrests, drinks in hand, laughing at my expense. Their dismissive glances told me everything. They thought they had the upper hand, like I was some outsider intruding on their exclusive little circle. "I guess I'll leave then," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. Their laughter faltered, replaced by surprised glances, as if they hadn't expected me to simply walk away. My wife blinked, caught off guard, but she didn't stop me. She didn't say a word. I walked past them, each step feeling heavy, but I didn't look back. I refused to let them see me falter. As I closed the door behind me, my phone began buzzing. First one call, then another. I ignored them all. Their laughter still echoed in my ears, but I didn't let it consume me. This wasn't the end of the conversation. It was just the beginning of something they weren't prepared for. I left the room, but their laughter still rang in my head, loud and piercing, as if it had followed me out. I took the stairs down to the lobby of our apartment building, each step feeling heavier than the last. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket, but I didn't have the energy to pull it out. Whatever they wanted to say, it didn't matter. They had already said enough upstairs. I sat in the living room, the silence thick around me, while above, I could still hear their laughter. It was muffled, but unmistakable. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone said everything. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. The first call I picked up wasn't from my wife. It was from one of her friends. "You're being a bit dramatic, don't you think?" Her voice was syrupy, the kind people use when pretending to care. "It's just a trip. Not everyone gets a room. Besides, the resort has couches. You could sleep there." I didn't respond immediately, which seemed to frustrate her. "Look, you didn't have to storm off like that. We were just joking around. Lighten up." Her condescension was palpable, as if she thought I was some child who couldn't handle a little teasing. "I'm not coming back," I said simply, and hung up. Moments later, another call came through. This time a video call. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was the same group, huddled together on the couch. My wife was in the middle, looking as indifferent as ever. One of them, the loudest of the bunch, grinned at me through the screen. "We were just talking about you," she said, as if that was supposed to make me feel included. "Don't be such a buzzkill, okay? Vacations are for the important people in the group, and well, you're not exactly the star of this one." She laughed, and the others followed suit. Even my wife. That laugh of hers. It wasn't malicious, but it wasn't apologetic either. It was the kind of laugh that said, "I'm going along with them because it's easier than standing up for you." I stared at them through the screen, a tight knot forming in my stomach. "You're right," I said finally, my voice even. "I'm not the star of your group. Enjoy the trip." Before they could respond, I ended the call. The weight of their mockery lingered, but I was too tired to care. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something colder, sharper. Their laughter had cut deep, but what stayed with me wasn't the sting of their words. It was the realization that the person I trusted most had chosen her audience over her partner. I wasn't going to be part of their show anymore. After ending the call, I sat in silence, staring at the blank screen of my phone. Their laughter, their dismissal. It all felt like a loop playing in my head. I didn't know what hurt more, the mocking words of her friends or the quiet complicity of my wife. I glanced at the clock. It was late, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not in that house, not with the weight of everything pressing down on me. I went upstairs quietly, making sure not to disturb their little party. The sound of their laughter trickled down the hallway, muffled but persistent. I entered our bedroom, closed the door behind me, and leaned against it for a moment. This was supposed to be our space, a place of comfort and understanding. Instead, it felt foreign, like I didn't belong anymore. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and began packing, just the essentials. A few changes of clothes, toiletries, my laptop. I wasn't leaving for good. Not yet, but I needed space, time to clear my head. Every item I tossed into the bag felt like another piece of myself I was trying to reclaim. When I was done, I zipped the bag shut and slung it over my shoulder. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of the framed photo on the nightstand. It was from our wedding day, smiling, happy. I picked it up, staring at it for what felt like an eternity. That day, I had believed we were a team, equals. Now, I wasn't so sure. Setting the frame face down on the nightstand, I left the room. In the hallway, their voices grew louder as I approached the living room. I paused just before entering, listening. They were talking about the trip again, plans for excursions, restaurants they wanted to try, luxury spas. My name didn't come up once. I stepped into the room, and the chatter stopped. They all turned to look at me. The atmosphere shifted. My wife was sitting in the middle of the group, her drink in hand, her expression unreadable. "I'm heading out," I said, keeping my voice neutral. One of her friends, the loudest from the video call, smirked. "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic. You're really leaving over a joke." I didn't answer her. Instead, I looked at my wife, waiting for her to say something, anything. She hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, but then she stopped. That hesitation spoke louder than any words ever could. I turned and walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, another one of her friends called out, "Guess he can't handle the heat." More laughter followed, but it sounded hollow now, forced. I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me. The night air was cold and crisp, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. I took a deep breath, my bag slung over my shoulder, and walked to my car. As I sat behind the wheel, I realized I felt lighter, freer, even. For the first time that night, I smiled. Let them laugh. I wasn't coming back. Not like this. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, the quiet hum of the engine, the only sound to keep me company. My mind raced with thoughts, anger, disappointment, and an aching sense of betrayal. I kept replaying the scene in my head, hoping to find a detail I'd missed, a sign that maybe I was wrong about how they treated me. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They had excluded me on purpose. That realization was heavy, but it also brought a strange clarity. Eventually, I pulled into a small roadside diner. The place was quiet, dimly lit, with only a handful of late-night customers scattered across the booths. I slid into a corner seat, ordered a coffee, and stared at my phone sitting on the table. It hadn't stopped buzzing. Missed calls and texts piled up, but I ignored them. I wasn't ready to hear what they had to say. Not yet. The coffee was hot, bitter, and exactly what I needed to shake off the fog in my mind. I thought about what I would do next. Go to a hotel? Drive out of town for a few days? The freedom of choice felt good, refreshing even. But just as I began to settle into the idea of this self-imposed isolation, my phone buzzed again. Something about it caught my attention, a text from my wife. Not an apology, not an explanation, just 3 words. "You need to answer." Something in her tone made me pause. I hesitated for a moment before opening the string of messages. Her friends had been trying to reach me too, but their texts were frantic now, a far cry from their mocking tone earlier. "Where are you? We need to talk. It's not safe." That last message stopped me cold. Not safe. What did that mean? Before I could process it, my phone started ringing again. My wife's name appeared on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice came through immediately, shaky and panicked. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I blinked, confused by her urgency. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "There's been an accident," she said, her words tumbling over each other. "One of the girls, she's hurt badly. We didn't know who else to call." I gripped the phone tighter, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "What happened?" I demanded. She explained in fragmented sentences. They'd gone out after I left, deciding to celebrate their trip early. One of her friends had too much to drink and, against everyone's advice, insisted on driving back. The car skidded off the road. It wasn't clear how bad the injuries were, but it was bad enough that they were now scrambling, panicked, and unsure of what to do. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to say it wasn't my problem, that they'd made it clear earlier in the night where I stood in their priorities. But another part of me, the part that still cared, couldn't ignore the desperation in her voice. "I'll head over," I said, finally, already standing and throwing a few bills onto the table. She gave me the location, a stretch of road not far from where we lived, and I hung up before she could say anything else. As I drove toward the scene, my mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. I wasn't sure what I would find when I got there or how I would feel seeing them again. But one thing was certain. This wasn't the ending they had planned for their perfect little vacation. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the ending I planned either. When I arrived at the crash site, the scene was chaotic. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the dark stretch of road, reflecting off shattered glass and twisted metal. The SUV they had been riding in was half destroyed. One side crumpled like a soda can. Paramedics worked frantically while a few officers directed traffic around the wreckage. My stomach twisted as I parked a short distance away. Stepping out of the car, I scanned the scene until I spotted them. My wife and her friends were huddled together on the shoulder of the road, visibly shaken. One of them was crying, her makeup streaked down her face. My wife saw me first. Her face was a mix of relief and guilt. She broke away from the group and rushed toward me. "You came," she said, her voice trembling. She looked at me like she wasn't sure if she had the right to. "What happened?" I asked, my tone clipped. I didn't have the patience for pleasantries. She explained in quick, broken sentences. Her friend, the loud one who had mocked me earlier, had been driving. She ignored everyone's protests, swearing she was fine to drive. She wasn't. When the car skidded off the road, it flipped. The passenger side took the brunt of the impact. Another friend, one who hadn't spoken much earlier in the evening, had been sitting there. She was now in the ambulance, her condition uncertain. "We didn't know what to do," my wife said, her voice cracking. "You were the only person I could think to call." I stared at her for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. This group, who had laughed at me, dismissed me, and excluded me, was now relying on me to clean up the mess they'd made. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I wasn't here to gloat. Someone's life was hanging in the balance, and that was bigger than my pride. I walked past her toward the paramedics. After confirming that the injured friend was being stabilized and transported to the hospital, I turned back to find her friends staring at me. Their faces, usually smug and full of bravado, were now pale and tearful. One of them tried to speak, but her voice cracked, and she quickly fell silent. None of them had anything to say now. It wasn't long before the tow truck arrived, and the officers began clearing the scene. My wife approached me again, quieter this time. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for everything. Tonight, before all of it. I was wrong." Her words should have felt like vindication, but they didn't. They felt hollow, as if she only realized my value now that things had fallen apart. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I looked at her friends, and at the wreckage behind us. "Let's get to the hospital," I said finally. "We can talk later." The ride, there was silent. My wife sat next to me, wringing her hands, occasionally stealing glances at me. I kept my eyes on the road, my mind racing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The night had taken a turn none of us expected, and while they were finally starting to see the cracks in their perfect facade, I wasn't sure forgiveness was something I could offer so easily. The hospital waiting room was unnervingly quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos we had just left at the crash site. My wife and her friend sat in a cluster, whispering among themselves. Their expressions were a mix of exhaustion and guilt. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching them from a distance. They didn't seem so smug now. The weight of the night's event hung heavily in the air, suffocating any attempt at conversation. The injured friend was still in surgery, and the wait stretched into hours. Occasionally, one of the others would glance in my direction, as if expecting me to say something. I didn't. I wasn't ready to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. My wife approached me eventually, her steps tentative. She sat down in the chair next to mine, but didn't speak right away. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, her eyes fixed on the sterile white tiles of the floor. Finally, she said, "I know I can't fix this tonight, but I need you to know I'm sorry." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch, forcing her to sit with her discomfort. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm but firm. "You didn't just exclude me from a trip. You excluded me from your life tonight. Do you have any idea what that felt like? To be treated like I don't matter? And not just by them, by you." Her face crumpled, and for the first time that night, she looked genuinely remorseful. "I was wrong," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I let them influence me. I didn't stand up for you." She stopped, taking a shaky breath. "I don't know why I acted the way I did. I can't believe how badly I hurt you." I let her words hang in the air for a moment before replying. "You can apologize all you want, but words won't erase what happened. I don't just want to hear that you're sorry. I need to see it." Her eyes searched mine, and she nodded. "I'll show you. I promise." Before I could say anything else, a doctor entered the waiting room. Everyone stood as he addressed us, explaining that the injured friend had pulled through the surgery but would need significant recovery time. Relief swept through the group, followed by a wave of quiet gratitude. It was a moment that should have brought them closer together, but I saw it differently. As the others embraced, their earlier arrogance stripped away, I realized that this night had been a wake-up call, not just for them, but for me. I didn't need their apologies to validate my worth. I didn't need to prove my place in their world. I had spent the night cleaning up their mess, but I wasn't going to keep doing it. When the group finally quieted, they turned to me as if expecting me to step into the role of savior once again. My wife, standing slightly apart, looked at me with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. But I wasn't here to make them feel better. "I'll take you home," I said to my wife, my tone neutral. "The rest of you can figure out your own rides." Her friends looked stunned, but no one protested. My wife nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Okay." The drive back was silent, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was reflective, as if we were both trying to make sense of what came next. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned off the engine and looked at her. "Things need to change," I said. "Not just for tonight, but for good." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "They will. I swear they will." I got out of the car and walked inside, leaving her to follow. The night had been long, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where my worth wasn't up for debate, and one where actions, not words, would determine the future of our relationship.